In this video, we're going to explore a case whereby someone who's in their late 50s is dealing with a layoff, right? He's around 59, he's dealing with a layoff, he's not sure how he's going to pay for his living costs, his wife, his kids, his lifestyle, his home, and things like that. And this is the reality that I'm trying to help you avoid, right? By understanding how you don't want to end up old and unemployed in a difficult position where you're going to have a very hard time finding your next job. You want to set yourself up financially earlier and build power, pay, and freedom through my coaching program, link in description. Let's listen to his story here.
I'm especially warning people who are in their 50s, 60s, 40s even, that ageism is a thing, and that if you go ahead and you lose your job, you're going to be in real trouble. And to prepare yourself, and I've made videos about this, and people have told me, a lot of people, that I give great advice. I have sometimes, I don't know where it comes from. It's not like I'm a deep thinker, trust me, but I often have really good advice, and happens, I wasn't prepared at all. So actually 3 weeks ago today, as I record this video, 3 weeks ago, I was working right here where I do my work every day, and an email came through, an calendar invite came through. It was from my boss. It was for the meeting to happen in 30 minutes. It was a 15-minute meeting, which it's always at least a half hour or an hour. And the only thing it said on the invite was ketchup, not ketchup like tomato ketchup. So I knew then and there at that moment, I was cooked. I was done. And I called someone that I work with and I said, hey, did you get one of these? And this person said, no, I didn't get one. And I was like, oh, I'm done. They're going to launch me today. And you should have spent that 30 minutes preparing for that call, but I didn't because I was a little bit freaked out as much as I knew. And I tell my wife this all the time. I'm like, hey, do not be surprised if you come home from work one day and I tell you that I lost my job, because that's just the world I live in, right? I'm in the media world, digital media, excuse me. So it's always, there's always consolidation and people getting fired, and it's like sales are never enough for people. They're always dissatisfied with the amount of sales coming through, and they always need a fall guy. And so they always fire whoever's in charge and replace him with somebody else with this hope or dream of this new person changing things. They never do, because the problems, as I said in another video, are always from the top, right? So they're always looking to lay blame on everybody else, but they don't look in the mirror. And so I told my wife this. I said many times, I said, don't be surprised if I get fired. And sure enough, I got fired. And as you know, or you may not know, I'm 59 years old. And so it's not an easy time, right? It's not like a lot of people don't want to hire a 59-year-old. They just don't. They can say there's no ageism. They can say there's law. No, you don't put your age on an application or a resume, but they ask you when you go to fill out the actual application, if you upload your resume, when you fill out your application piece and then you put in your college, they ask you, when did you graduate? I graduated in the 80s, late 80s, but the 80s. Yeah, so here I am. And I got to tell you, it's like a mind. If you've never gotten fired, and I haven't really gotten fired. Once I got fired, but didn't care. But I never really got fired, and it's a mind fuck. It really is.
So before we continue his story, ageism is definitely real, right? I would definitely recommend most of my viewers, if you're in your 20s and your 30s, even early 40s, those are your main earning years. After that, it can lead to a lot of instability. Now, it's already difficult enough if you are in the younger age demographic for working, because there is a lot of layoffs. You might be devalued as a more junior employee, but that's when you should really have the time and energy to put in to make as much more money as possible and prepare for later instability, right? There's no such idea that they used to have in the past where you can have a stable life in your 40s maybe because you've built a career over the long term. A lot of the times it's not how it's working these days, right? Ageism does exist, and it's not necessarily your fault if you're older, obviously doing the same job as someone who's younger. And it's just best to prepare for that, right? You'll become the fall guy even though it's not your fault, like he mentioned here. Sometimes it's management who have to get pushed out, sometimes it's a salesperson in his case. And the thing is a lot of the times it's last minute warnings, right? You spend decades at a company, being loyal to a company, doing extra work for a company, and then they want to announce they're going to fire you, and they give you half an hour notice. In half an hour you got a meeting for 15 minutes with us in HR. You've worked it here for a few decades or however long it's been. Oh, we're just going to let you go now, so here's a 15-minute call. Then your access, given he said he works here, he's working from home, I assume they'll remove the access to the laptop. Then they'll drop you an email to your personal email with the legal details. You might have to sign it and get a payout as part of a layoff package, some severance agreement, and it's done, right? They just pushed you out, and all the time and sacrifice you put into a job, they just don't care about you. Now, he's talking about you working in digital media, and the thing is with sales, it's performance-based, and sometimes it's not your fault the economy is doing bad, there's a recession, and then all of a sudden you lose your job because you're not making enough sales, but the economy is just slow, and it's not your performance that's been the issue. And that's what I'm trying to say. I remember working on the trading floor, and many times would see this change in the management of a trading desk or the trading floor overall, and it was obvious that they just were throwing out someone to replace them with someone new, thinking they're going to have a brand new strategy to increase profits, when often that's just not going to be the case. You're just replacing some old manager with a new manager, and they're going to have a similar strategy. They're just going to frame it slightly differently. And that's the reality. There's lots of just posturing and fakeness to pretend they're going to be making internal corporate changes, and then you become the fall guy, right? And that's why I tell you, when you're in life, you want to question everything, right? When you're at the corporate world, what are the signs that things are coming up? Like, he could sense he was coming up to a layoff, even though it wasn't directly told up until that point when he's talking to his wife. That's why I recommend you to pay attention to all the signs, right? Often they're going to smile in your face. They're going to then dump you when you're too old or considered too expensive, right? See, I'm trying to teach you how to see the coming difficulty in your corporate career and how to cash out before they kill your career by having a long-term plan, right? Building skills, building different income streams, and building that leverage to make ageism, layoffs, and corporate betrayal irrelevant to your long-term life strategy, right? So click the link in description if you want to join my coaching program and work with me to build a better future before they try to erase you. So let's go back to his story here.
Which is very short-sighted of me because I know better. I know how the industry is, the amount of change that's going on, how often leadership changes, how often you get hired and fired, and they grow headcount, they reduce headcount, they change commissions, they do all this stuff. So I knew it was kind of unlikely, but I know part of me just didn't want to fucking deal with it. And so it's my fault. And it left me where I am right now. And I'm like, I want to come out. Listen, if I could do this for a living, I'd be really happy, right? If I could not even fully replace my income, but at least somewhat replace my income and do this, I would drive a fucking Uber. And just because I've had it. I know I've had this awakening about what life is really about, especially when it comes to work life and the big scam that has been perpetrated on American worker about what it means to be an employee-employer relationship and what it's all about and the meaning of it and the loyalty or non-loyalty that's involved in that relationship. Just, you're basically out for yourself. You're on your own. You need to be out for yourself. You need to make sure at every turn, every step you take, that you are doing something that's going to put you in a better position without worry about your employer. It's got to be about you, because your employer at any given moment could turn around and just say you're done. And then when you're done, you're done. You're fucking done.
Now, before we continue with the boomer's story, we need to consider what he's saying here, right? So firstly, it's very difficult sometimes because you're trying to focus on your day-to-day job, but your mind ends up racing, thinking about your future in an industry, particularly if you are getting older. And the physical reaction is very real, right? In terms of sensing things might be off at work, you can sense a layoff. Also, the kind of emotional detachment you feel after the layoff. Oh, I'm just done with this job. So you have a sense of relief because you could sense the impending sense of doom that something was going to go wrong, and you can breathe easy after a layoff too. And then you can take a moment, relax, and restart your job search or rethink your life. And I think it's very interesting what he mentioned there. He said he wouldn't mind making a little bit of money online through his channel here and driving Uber. And I think this is just the reality for many people, right? There is a boom to a certain extent in those gig type of jobs. I know they don't pay well, but you're going to see more and more people doing that, like balancing 2 or 3 different income sources that might not be high paying, but they cobble it together. And firstly, they have time freedom to live their life how they want in terms of their life schedule and work a few hours in say food delivery or driving around people in an Uber, and then they have like some side income online. You're going to see more and more things like that because it's becoming less and less realistic to rely on one just standard 9 to 5. And this is the thing, how I'm not knocking the guy, but it does feel like him and many people in his demographic live beyond their means, thinking there'd be financial stability with a 9 to 5 forever, right? You should be financially set up for life by the time you're 59. It does seem like, does he really need that big house? Was he really in a financial position to afford that? Being in the danger zone, that's That's what I see these guys as being. They're in the danger zone. They have a big house. They really live beyond their means. And what they don't seem to get is living a normal life now is living beyond your means in many cases. He's probably living in a similar house as other people in his income bracket, other people in his salary range, other people with his job title, but he doesn't realize, because he's trying to fit in with everyone else, that is not sustainable. I should have radically downsized. Live well within your means. That's the strategy now. And the thing is, again, you want to put yourself first, because any employer can switch up on you easily. So there are many red flags to look out for job cuts, and we're going to cover some of them here.
I worked for had a merger. And anytime, if you work for a company and there's a merger, Jesus Christ, get ready, because somebody's going. People are going to go. That's the whole point of a merger, is to take two companies that are huge, turn them into one company that are even bigger, but to reduce the head count. So basically 70% of the staff between the two companies remain. So you can get rid of 30% of the people and have a company that's twice the size, right? So when there's a merger, there's people that are going to go. They call it duplication of effort or whatever, but people are going. So if you work for a company that has a merger, go. So we had a merger, and I had been in some meetings a while ago when this thing first started percolating, and there was talk that there's going to be what they call a RIF, which means reduction in force, which means people are going to get fired. So I knew things were going to happen, but I'm in sales, and I've been there on my team. I was there the longest on our team, and I'm the most seasoned. So I was let go, and I'm like, why am I letting go? I said right out when on that call, I was like, was this about my age? No, it's not about your age. I'm like, well, what's it about? I never had a PIP. I never had a bad performance review. I've never been written up for anything ever, right? So why me? And they're because it's fucking HR and stupid people on the other end of the call. They're in their strict guidelines of what they can and cannot say to you, right? They want to protect themselves. So they didn't say shit. And I'm like, well, so I did say, well, I said, so are you eliminating the position or my position? And the person who, not HR, who let me go said, it's your position. So it's personal. It's definitely a personal reason, for sure. It's not about the metrics or the numbers or my job performance. It's personal. So I don't know why it's personal. I never had an argument with anybody, but I have a feeling there are some people in the org that didn't like me for whatever reason.
Just look up for red flags that come in when you have to deal with a layoff, right? What are signs that a job cut's coming up? I mentioned merger and acquisitions coming up, where they want to save costs after a merger. When they do a sudden hiring spree, sometimes they bloat the team. I've seen this many times in investment banking. They rapidly grow a team by hiring so many new people, and then they get rid of the people they don't like. And that's the way that they say your role's redundant because we have too many people on the team, things like that. Then you have budget freezes where they go, oh, we just can't keep up with the same employees. We have a freeze on budget, so we have to get rid of people. Changes in leadership, they will hire their friends to take over your role, essentially. Often closed door meetings, lots of management having meetings behind closed doors. That could be a sign of layoffs coming up too. A shift in the company's strategy, changes in performance reviews, so more employees are ranked at lower levels. Loss of major clients, that means they're losing revenue, they have to get rid of employees. They're traveling perks, the traveling benefits that you get at a company, different company benefits are getting reduced. This means they're trying to save costs, and they'll obviously include layoffs as part of that. It could be HR and management being extra fake nice and friendly and things like that before a layoff. Out of nowhere, it's not metrics or performance, it's essentially a personal move to get rid of you. There's only so much you can do to control that when someone has a personal issue with you, which seems to be the case here. Now let's continue to listen to his story in a few different excerpts here in a different video.
I am a pay for hire person. You're going to pay me, sure, but I'm only going to do the amount of work that I'm getting paid for. I'm not going above and beyond. I'm not going to do extra. That's stupid because I know I don't get anything for that. So they don't want that. They want the young person. And that means they want to get rid of us. And you know what? They do get rid of us. And there's a lot of ways to do it. They can't just fire you for your age because that's illegal. But they have a lot of different tactics and tricks up their sleeves in order to make life miserable for older workers. So we leave on our own. And then conscious pilot, they could wash their hands of any sort of crime, any sort of discrimination. And they have a lot of ways to do that. Number one, they could just make you uncomfortable, right? They start to make you uncomfortable. They start to give you little nicknames at the work: old man, grandpa, slow mover, the turtle, all this kind of stuff. And you start feeling older. There's a little bit of a spotlight shined onto you because you're the older person in a sea of millennials and Gen X worker bees who are still part of the robot system. So they start to do that. Number two, they start to kind of diminish your role unofficially. You don't get invited to as many important meetings as you used to get invited to. Or there are projects that are important projects for the company that you normally would have led. You would have been in charge of those things, but suddenly your name is off of that. It's not there anymore. And the Gen X kid or the Gen Z millennial woman who just started is leading the charge for $15 an hour. So that starts to happen. Another thing they do to get rid of older people is they start to pile on busy work. They start to give you more and more work, which adds to your stress level, and it produces a sense that you can't keep up, and they stack in work. And what does that do to not only older people, but to everybody else? It stresses us out. We start having to work later and longer to keep up. We start to have anxiety, sleepless nights, and they do that in an effort to make life so effing uncomfortable that, especially if you're older, you're going to say, I can't do this anymore. I'm too old for this shit. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to retire. That's it.
So it looks like the boomer finally woke up, right? They woke up like Gen Z woke up earlier in life, right? In terms of understanding companies are really exploiting you. In his case, he's seeing it from his perspective. The older generation are being discarded. So the companies can exploit the younger generation by giving them the corporate Kool-Aid and fooling them that if they work hard, they can make a ton of money. He's an older generation. You can't run that type of lie and that type of corporate Kool-Aid joke on him. He can't be easily fooled like the younger generation. Now, there are three key strategies he's highlighting there of how to look out for them trying to push you out. Firstly, making you uncomfortable with passive jokes, demeaning your work output. It could be your age, your race, little jokes that won't get flagged to HR because they're so minuscule. I had to deal with a lot of that in certain toxic work environments. The second thing is giving your work task to others because they'll want your role to seem redundant or unnecessary before they give you a layoff. You might be kept off email chains, meetings, projects, things like that. They give inexperienced people lots of your work tasks to do instead of you because they want to get rid of you. The third thing is they look to take the opposite approach, whereby the opposite of taking a work away from you is giving you more work, right? And then in the end, you end up getting overworked and overburdened, and you start questioning your abilities to do the job, second guessing your ability, and then they're complaining about your performance not being good enough. You're effectively being managed out. They're making it look like it's your fault, but actually it's the company's fault for manipulating you in this way. Now, I don't want to knock this guy again, but the whole point is at 59 years old, right, you should be set up for financial freedom, essentially, right? If you work different corporate roles by living well within your means, which he hasn't done. So he's stuck in a position where he's like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to survive the rest of my life and support my family too. And this is what I keep advising you guys in your 20s and your 30s to do, is really set yourself up, whether it's financial freedom, side hustle, getting a high paying corporate role, investing, living well within your means to deal with this unstable world, so you don't end up like this guy.
But good luck finding another job. You can go on LinkedIn and there's after a story about people who have been unemployed, people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who have been unemployed for months and months and months and years, and they are unable not only to find a job, they can't even get an interview. And why can't they get an interview with all that experience? Why can't they even get an interview? Why aren't they getting called back if they do get an interview for a second interview? And there's only one reason for it. It's age. Your age. Nobody wants to hire aging workers. I know I'm going to get a comment or two.
See, this is the thing. When you're experienced and unemployed, it's tough because you can do the job. You've been doing it for decades, right? And then all of a sudden you need to develop a unique skill set, switch out your industry, prepare for self-employment. You can't get interviews, and it's very difficult to prove it's because of your age, right? So that's the very difficult reality you have to deal with. And he's dealing with it, and many other people in his demographic are. So in this more recent video, he's talking about some of the harsh truths about being an older worker.
Start to question. I've been working at this shitty job for 30, 35 years. I go in every day. My boss kicks my ass. I have to say, yes, ma'am, no, man, yes, no, sir. Be here on Friday, be here on Saturday, show up at 9, work from home, work in the office, back to all that stuff. That You have to bite your tongue and hold back your opinions on a lot of things. It just sucks. I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who is thrilled with their career, with their job, especially if they work for somebody else. Most people that I know, at least, are like, this sucks, man. If I can get out of here today, I would get out of here today. And that means, how are you going to get out of here today? Because most people I know at my age, I'm not lying, I know a couple that have some scratch, they have some coin in the bank, but most people that I know that are over 50 don't have a friggin' dollar to their name, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck still, because with every dollar more you make in income every single year for these last 30 years, you start spending a dollar more. That's just the way it works. So what are you going to do if you hate your job and you don't have any money? You can't just say, I'm going to find myself, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, I'm going to quit. I'm just going to quit my job and do my thing. Because you see a lot of videos like that on YouTube and other places. Hey, just start your side hustle and then just quit your job. Well, in order to start a side hustle, you need to have some side time and some side scratch usually to get a side hustle going. And for many people, you can't just start a side hustle because your actual employer forbids it, written in a work contract that you must only work for your employer and somebody else. But even if it didn't have that, let's say you have a normal job, you're trying to support your family, you're getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, like I do every single day. I get up at 5:30 in the morning, take my son to school, and then I'm at my desk by 7:30 because I feel like, especially at my age, I have to work twice as hard as the younger people because I'm going to be the first one to get blown out. Right? I'm going to be the first person. When it's time to cut, who do we cut? Let's cut this 50-year-old guy who makes more money than the 27-year-old kid, right? So I got to work twice as hard to make myself twice as valuable as anybody else. So that means I'm working at 7:30 and I'm not stopping till 6:30 in the evening. I have dinner and then at 7:30, after one round of Wheel of Fortune, I'm sleeping, man. I'm not doing a side hustle. So side hustle, the idea of it sounds like very romantic. I'm going to side hustle to $10K a month. Try it when you have a real job and real responsibilities and a lot of other things to do. Just try it and let me know how it works out, everybody. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that for most people, we have to be realistic. What is doable and what's not doable? And then I know there are some people that say, hey, man, you just don't want it bad enough. Because if you wanted it bad enough, man, you would wake up instead of at 7:30, at 6:30, you'd wake up at 4:30, do your side hustle for 2 hours. And then I could do that. But then am I going to drop dead of a heart attack after 6 months of doing that? It's not really feasible, man. It's not.
This boomer's literally crashing out, right? So you can see we've done a few videos with him here, right? So firstly, you got to figure out what is a dignified life and how to get there as quick as possible, right? You don't want to be too little too late. And that's the situation he's in. And I know other people around his age or older who they wasted decades of their life living the average normal life. All their free time, they wasn't focused on a side hustle. When they were younger, maybe they didn't have kids or they had less responsibilities. Or even when they're older and their kids grow up and they can dedicate more time to a side hustle. They don't do that. What they do is they just spend their time watching the news, watching their regular pointless TV shows in the evening. And then they seem to be, I've seen so many boomers are obsessed with the news, right? In America, you have CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. In the UK, lots of people watch Sky News, BBC News, or GBN News, which is the newer kind of Fox News version of the media in the UK, and they waste so many hours every week and on the weekend, and they don't really think about living life efficiently. And that's what I do with my life, right? And many people in my generation, millennials or people who are Gen Z, have to do. I'm always thinking about efficiency. How can I save time? How can I meal prep? Do you think people in his generation are meal prepping? They're not even eating that healthy, and they're just eating like pasta and stuff like that. They're not meal prepping. On Sunday, I'm going to cook like 3 meals and put them in the fridge, and another 3, put them in the freezer. That'll mean every evening of the weeknight I'm free, so I can go to the gym in the mornings, come home in the evening, focus on my side hustle for like 2 hours, and then go to sleep. They have no idea the reality that most of us are dealing with, and they had it easy. He could have set himself up to live an easy life, but there's so many people like him, boomers, they live the average normal life, and now they're whinging about it, right? It's too late to switch up his plan, right? And this is why I have my coaching, right? So you don't end up like this guy. I know it's harsh to be putting it like this, but you don't want to end up like this guy, right? 59 years old, just dealing with a layoff, low money, low energy, lack of skills and ideas to be self-employed, dealing with probably a dead bedroom marriage, a high risk of divorce at his rate, and then he could be in an even worse situation, right? And this is the thing, right? You need to plan ahead, because you need to think about strategies that are actually going to work for you over the long term, and how to pivot when the time's right. Because otherwise you're just getting dictated to all the time in a corporate job. You end up an old and broken down man like this guy, right? So when the company snaps its fingers, tell you to work from home, you work from home. They snap their fingers, they tell you to return to the office, you go and do that. Then you have to deal with a girl boss manager or a difficult manager, and you're just getting bossed around the whole time, and you end up with very little to show for it, apart from maybe a big house where you still have a massive mortgage to pay off, right? The reality of many people is this guy. They're just pretending to do well. They have the trappings of a good life, but not an actual good life. A big house is a big mortgage. They have a fancy car and it's a big loan, right? So it's just the appearance of success. Let's listen to his story here.
The ending is you may be stuck with that boss who's a real asshole. You may have to say, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You may have to keep getting up at 5:30 in the morning, going to work by 7:30, working extra because you're older and you don't want to get fired. You may have to just put up with somebody you don't like for the remainder of your working years. And if you're lucky, your working years are shorter than your actual years. But again, a lot of people I know completely will not have enough money to retire, will not be able to have a retirement. And even if they're taking Social Security, they're going to be that 75, 85-year-old guy working at Stop and Shop, bagging groceries, standing on his feet all day. I see that all the time, man. And I go to the checkout counter. There's a poor old lady there, and she's like, she could barely move. She has arthritis and whatever it is, and she's bagging those groceries, standing up. And they make you stand up. They can't even sit down. And that's their life, man. They're tired. They ache. They hurt. And yet they have to go to fucking Stop and Shop, or else they'll be eating cat food at the end of the day.
I have a hard time feeling sorry for these people, because they could have really planned ahead, right? They got too normalized to comfort and easy life, easy, stable jobs, which my generation and generation slightly younger, slightly older, never had, right? So you want to get ready now so you don't end up like a sorry sack of shit, wishing you can redo the past, right? Wishing you had more time for a side hustle at 59 years old, right? You could have done it earlier in life, right? The thing is, he's talking about people bagging groceries who are old age pensioners, and there's no way to live, right? That's why you need to really plan ahead, whatever that is: saving, investing, side hustle, high paying corporate job, so you can enjoy your life later on, and plan ahead. You see the direction society's going in, right? You see how things are going to get worse and worse, and the government's ignoring it, pretending it's not happening. Corporations, your managers ignoring it, pretending things aren't getting worse every day of your life. And then you have to play along and pretend too, because everyone's pretending, right? You don't want to do that. You want to build power, pay, and freedom, so you don't end up like this guy, right, that we've just been covering here. And you don't want to be 59 years old driving around in Uber. That's all I'm saying, right? There's nothing wrong with that if you want to do that to make a bit of extra money. But is that the life you want to end up having after working in digital marketing sales for a few decades and you still can't retire? So if you're interested in power, pay, and freedom, let me know. There's a link in description. You can work with me directly. Let me know in the comments what you feel about this guy's story. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.